Hi, I'm Neha Negandhi, and I'm the host of Seen from the Inside talk show. We're here at the 2017 International Rotary Convention at the Georgia World Congress Center in Atlanta, Georgia. We're here talking to Gary Haugen, who is the founder and CEO of the International Justice Mission, which is a nonprofit organization that helps the poor all around the world. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us, why did you start the International Justice Mission?
Well, I was in 1994 the director of the UN's genocide investigation in Rwanda. You might remember that horrific tragedy.
Yes.
And I was working for the Department of Justice at the time and sent over to try to bring to justice the people who had led that genocide. And in the midst of that, of course, we were sorting through the pain of what it means to be a victim of that kind of genocidal violence. And in the midst of that, I saw this was a problem that the poor encounter, where we are used to thinking about the poor being hungry or being sick or not having shelter, but what about when the poor are being violently abused? And so I left the Department of Justice and 20 years ago to start International Justice Mission. And what we do is we help protect the poor from violence. And the reason we're here talking to Rotary is because one of the largest forms of violence against the poor around the world is slavery.
Yes.
In fact, there's more people in slavery today than in any other time in human history. And so we're just beginning to raise awareness of that and about how it is we could actually end slavery for good.
Well, let's talk about the modern form of slavery, which is sometimes known as human sex trafficking, which is what the panel was about that you spoke about this morning alongside Senator Bob Corker and Ashton Kutcher, who founded and runs the Thorn Foundation. Sex trafficking is a huge concern here in Atlanta because it's one of the hubs in the United States because of the international airport that we have here, all the highways that crisscross around here, and there's many other reasons for it. But this is one of the cities that is central to being a hub of human sex trafficking. How do you address that problem here in Atlanta locally for our listeners?
Well, let me give you a little context for this. So when we say human trafficking, that's another word for human slavery. It's all kinds of forced labor, but sex trafficking is one part of that, where the labor or the work that someone is forced to do is to provide sex. So it's really a business of rape for profit. It's as ugly and simple as that. And there are about 46 million people in slavery around the world, and about 20% of them are trafficked into sex slavery. And it's everywhere in the world, and it does happen in our own communities. It's sort of like the HIV/AIDS epidemic, right? Where every country had an HIV/AIDS problem, and it needed to be addressed with urgency. But we also learned that over time, actually, the AIDS epidemic was starting to concentrate itself in Africa, in about 7 countries that were producing most of the transmissions. And so, yes, everybody needs to have concern for sex trafficking in their own community, but it's a global problem where we need to not only look to the vulnerabilities in our own community, but also to the larger vulnerabilities around the world.
So what do we do as a community to do our part to make an imprint to stop human trafficking?
Well, 3 things I shared here with all the folks here at the Rotary Conference. The first is get yourself educated. Sex trafficking means that in places where there's basically commercial sex services, and that's prostitution and so forth, that will tend to be in your massage parlors or taverns or bars or karaoke bars. A lot of times in the back corners of those places, there's a nasty business of sex trafficking taking place where people are being forced, especially children and young girls. Many times these are folks who've been separated from their families, and they are vulnerable, and they are then being exploited by people who manipulate them. So I would have an eye out in your own community for especially young women and teenage girls who are separated from their families. They're in a vulnerable place, and they seem to be being led around by some adults who they seem to be a little bit fearful of. In some of those situations, you are going to find commercial sexual exploitation, and just let local law enforcement know. So get educated, and then begin to encourage the local authorities to get after the problem. But then finally, you can serve survivors in your own community. If you just go on the internet and Google survivor services for sex trafficking, you'll find a number of wonderful organizations here in this community that are serving this community.
Specifically in Atlanta, there are several that I'm going to rattle off called youthspark.org, and you could go to youthspark.org.com. And Junior League of Atlanta does a ton of work to help human trafficking victims. So there's some things that the community can get involved in. If this is your cause, if this is something that you feel strongly in creating social good in our community, then, like he said, take part in these organizations, or just be aware that this happens. Look around you. Our local transportation system here is called MARTA. They have signs now on their train lines and in their platforms talking about this. If you see something, report it. And this is some of the hotline services that can be called. Alongside that, the Hartsfield International Airport also has some training and awareness going on. Are you seeing this sort of pattern happening in cities all around the world?
Yes, we are starting to see that people are realizing that slavery can take place right in your own backyard, and you just need to raise awareness. We also need to do is make sure the local authorities are attending to it, because the local police and law enforcement have a whole set of priorities of things they're trying to address. And sometimes the kids that feel sort of in trouble in the shadows, they don't necessarily get the priority of law enforcement, proactive investigation. So it's great to raise the awareness, but it's not going to come just from me and you spotting the trouble. It has to be proactive investigation by law enforcement to go find it, and that's what we need to encourage around the world, because here's the story. After you take care of all the sex trafficking in the United States, what percentage of that problem will still remain in the world? About 99%. So the mass numbers of this abuse are scattered around the world, and if we have some belief that people around the world is just as precious as our own children, we need to help those vulnerable children around the world. And that's the amazing thing about Rotary International. There's 1.2 million Rotarians, and they're very active in their communities, taking on these kinds of difficult problems, and that's something that deserves our support.
So one last question for you. Why is it important that we all do our part to create social good, to add to the social economy that's happening in our community, our country, and then even the world?
Well, it's always been so simple for me, because I was just raised in a faith that taught you were supposed to do unto others as you'd want done unto you. So I've got 2 daughters, and what if they were in a vulnerable place and had been taken into some sex trafficking operation? Or what if my young boys were sold into slavery? What would I want someone to do for me and my family? I would want someone to help. So if that's what I would want someone else to do for me, if I were in that vulnerable situation, then actually it's kind of a joyful opportunity to get to go to fight on behalf of those that in the moment don't have a voice. So International Justice Mission gives people a way to do that all around the world. They can become freedom partners with us, which is a way of actually going to the front lines to take on this kind of struggle around the world. So however people find the joy of doing unto others as they would want it done for them, I think we provide at least one platform for them to be able to do that.
There you go. Now, if you want to help out the International Justice Mission, please go to, what's your?
IJM.org.
IJM.org. Thank you so much for joining us. And I said this before to you, but you do so much good work for our world, for creating a better place for this generation, and not only that, but the generation that's going to follow that and the one after that, which I believe in, as
sure.
That we're parents, and we have to leave something for our children and our children's children to create that path, to keep creating social good in our world, right?
For sure.
So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Get more Inside Scoop by following us on social media. On Facebook and Instagram, we're at Seen from the Inside. That's SEEN from the Inside. On Twitter, we're at Seen from Inside. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is Seen from the Inside Talk Show. Stay tuned for more.